All right, folks, we are picking up where we left off with the first episode in our Inkarnate tutorial series, and that was where we built this rough landmass, which it looks pretty bad right now, but we're going to be doing a lot of work to this to get it up to something that is better. Now, we've already sort of done a little bit of shaping along the edges of the coast here. We will continue to work on things there. And that's a long-term objective to get this looking like something better. But today I wanted to talk a little bit more about putting in geography. Specifically, we want to look at mountain ranges and things of that nature. Thinking about where do you want everything. Now, the easiest solution in terms of biomes, say like different types of, whether we're talking desert, or jungles, or things of that nature, the easiest solution is just to deal with it in the same way that we deal with it on our planet, which means north is cold, south is hot, west and east are whatever you want them to be. But essentially, you're thinking about this as a, um, um, pole, North Pole, temperate down into something dry. Now, you can also go north and south are cold, and east and west, it just depends where you've got a temperate zone in the middle. You could choose to do either or. The easiest way to do that, in terms of, let's just say we want to demonstrate that something is sort of the frozen north and something is somewhat deserty, towards the south, as an example, is going to be to use paint on textures. And we will do a little bit of that today. But the other thing I like to think about before we ever get into painting is, um, remembering that in a fantasy world, you can kind of do whatever you want. So if we go look at the Ganya clone that we had cloned out, this map doesn't really follow, um, in terms of the mountains, they don't look like any of the mountains that we have on planet Earth, um, because they don't really follow any distinct pattern here. Same thing for like, everybody always loves to point out like Mordor on J.R. Tolkien's map. It's just this like box. It's like a U shape on its side, and it's like, mountains normally wouldn't form like that if we're talking fault lines and stuff. But that's the great thing about building in a fantasy world, especially when there's magic involved. It doesn't have to necessarily make sense. But what do I mean by that? Well, let's say that you want to have a mountain range on one of these continents. I'm going to use this continent down here as an example. And we're going to say that we want a mountain range that goes across from one side to the other. Now, one of the ways you can help do this, just to give yourself, I think it's the line tool. It's been a while since this. You can just draw a path like that. Now, you don't have to keep it, but you could also try to make it a little more arched like that, right? Um, but essentially, what you want is we want to define a path for some mountains that go through here. Now, in order to do the maps on the continent, we would use stamps. So we would go in here to the stamps. We can open up the catalog. And remember, we're working in the fantasy world. Um, we could look at, here's brown mountains. We don't really want to use brown mountains, but let's just go straight to the mountain pack. Well, I know that I want those to be rocky mountains of some type. Here's, we got some beige mountains. Um, let's do the green mountains. I think that those look interesting enough. Now we could choose to use random stamps, and depending on the size and scope of what you're building here, remembering thinking about the geometry, and if you're wanting to build an 8K map, this is a tip I haven't talked about in any of my episodes yet, but there is a tip. And a reason that I like building in 8K is because you can scale out immensely whenever you're building a city map or a world map. Then, when you need to then make a map of the coast, as an example, you could scroll way down in on these 8K maps and still get the definition you're looking for. Cut a quadrant out if you want to, and then take that as a clone and move it somewhere else and continue to flesh it out from there. But that's a more advanced video that we'll be getting to later on. In the meantime, we want to add some geography to this. So something to think about is if you're creating mountains, the reason I say to draw a line is not just to guide your mountains, but think about in our world, we have fault lines which go on for miles and miles and hundreds of miles and can potentially go way beyond a continent because the continent might overlap a fault, but that fault could carry on a long way. So we would just put something not just here, and I'm just going to slap these down as a um, just there for now. We're just putting those there for now. But then we want to go back to um, the mask tool, and we want to come out and we want to say, all right, I want to add some additional mountains. But here's the thing, they're not really going to be mountains. What we're going to do is we're going to come in here and sort of just paint some different things here. And what these represent are the peaks of additional mountains that follow that fault line out, right? And whatever the arc is that you're giving them, you just put them along that line like so. You can put as many as you want, or as few as you want. You can also choose, if we want to come over here, you can choose to make these a little bit bigger and have these be, maybe even have a couple of bigger islands like this. You know, these could be whatever you want them to be. But essentially what we're doing is we're continuing that mountain out into the ocean. And now if we take this path and we get rid of it, you're left with that right there. So now we've added a little bit of a continuing mountain range off that follows that same fault line wherever that might happen to be. All right, so now that we've established that, we can do that essentially anywhere we want there to be mountains. Now, originally when I put down these little islands down, that's not the island range that I want down here in the southeast, because I want those to be like a mountainous thing. So we're going to redo that here in a minute. But for the moment, this would be a quick and easy way to get some mountain ranges up, right? Now, we might also want another range, probably one that goes through that follows this up through the spine. So one of the things I wanted to do is I'm not quite happy with that um, formation here. So we're actually going to bring this out a little bit more, sort of like so. Because I want that to be, we'll come in here and we'll fill this in. All right. Now the reason I want to do this, we're going to subtract now. We're going to take away all of these islands. Why did I do that? Well, because the next thing I want to do is I want to do an island nation that's part of like a fault line, right? Sort of like that. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go back to my stamp. I'll just pick some mountains. Now I don't want these to be quite as big as those over there. Plus I don't have as much room to work with. So I'll bring the size on these down a little bit. And we're gonna just do some placement up through here. Right? And maybe even, this is just meant to represent a rough thing because we can always come back and tweak mountain ranges later on. And that's, something that we will do later on is tweak individual things. But in the meantime, that works pretty good. Let's bring one more down here and put it on the host. Now we got to go back into the mask tool, and I want to go back to the adding, and I want to focus on this area here. So bring our roughness tool back down to 2, and let's just paint. You know, bring it down a few more notches in size. But then out here at the end, all right, so this gives us a much larger like island, because I've already had this idea in my mind of boom. Now we've got a seafaring nation that can be based on this island. Um, but I just like, yeah, I'm thinking ahead already. I'm letting the story influence the world building a little bit. All right, so let's just say that's all we want to do with a couple of mountain ranges, right? That's simple. We can always come back and add more if we want to later, but that's a good start with a couple of little mountain ranges that we could continue to flesh out. Definitely have more mountains elsewhere. Um, but what's the next step? Well, the next step is thinking about your biomes, you know, the geography that you're going to have in terms of your landscape. Um, so we can go in here to the brush tool, and remember that the background is the water layer. So anything we do to the background layer, if I wanted to paint this, it just you go and paint the background layer. Now we don't actually want to paint the background layer. So what we want to do is we want to go in here, and we actually want to work on the foreground. So this is even tells you, it says this is used to paint on land created with the mask tool, okay, which we painted. So we'd come over to the foreground layer. Once we're there, we then can go in here and look at the things we want. Now, if we want to say, let's create a sandy environment somewhere. Well, we would want to look for something that's sandy. So right now we're in the fantasy world. So up here in the barren lands is if we get into like sandy stuff. Now, I like the idea of a grayish wasteland right now for this map. So let's take this one right here. Now, if I were to paint on right now, right there on the map, you can see where I just painted, and that looks horrific because it's very, very stark. So what we're doing is we're just essentially painting over the green text here. The green texture. What I want to do is I want to drop the opacity down. So I can go up here to you can either do it up here at the top or you can do it on the bottom left, but it's the teardrop looking icon. And we just want to bring that down to like, I don't know. I like to go down to like 25%, 25, 26%. There we are. Now, I just want the whole southern, oh, I didn't, I need to go forward. Um, I'll fix that in a minute. I undid my I forgot that I hit the undo button, and we got to redo that texture really quick. Hang on. We need to repaint this. Whoops. All right, there we go. That's mostly good to go now. Okay. So if we want this to be something deserty here, let's say that we want it to follow these mountains because they were maybe there's something bad with the mountains. There's some sort of, you know, again, magic. You can introduce this if you want, but we could just say that maybe these mountains have some sort of nasty plague effect. So I've got my tool set at 26%, and basically I'm going to come down in here and I'm just going to give this a pass like so. You'll notice it's adding a very faint grayness to the terrain, right? So I can extend that out, do a couple passes, and we can make it as heavy as we want and as prevalent as we want, which also will mean I'm going to want to change these from green mountains to some sort of more desolate mountains. And then we can bring it up here into the onto these islands here, bring it out on these islands as much as we want, something like this. Um, so now that we've kind of done that, we've darkened it across the middle of those mountains, we can then come back and if we want to, pick a different, slightly lighter color of gray, bring the opacity down even further to say 20%, and then come out here and just paint along these outer fringes, something like this, you know, just so that we have a nice coating of what is a very faint and subtle um, wasteland interior. Okay. Now we're going to change these mountains out real quick. And there's an easy way to do that. We can literally just come in here and select them and hit delete. Missed one. But we know that we want mountains there, so we go back into the mountains, open to the catalog. But this time I want desolate looking mountains. So I actually want to use these mountains, probably the mountains light. Let's see what it looks like when we use the mountains light. We could also go with the dark mountains medium. Let's try those first. Hang on. Let me bring the size back up on these because this is actually a sizable mountain range. They don't have the jagged peaks that I'm looking for though, I don't think. No, I don't like those. We're gonna undo those. We're definitely gonna try these mountains light. Okay. Okay. Now I'm gonna do a little bit more manual placement this time so you guys can see what this looks like. So I'm resizing them as I go. And I've got them all set to the same mask. Now, masks aren't going to matter for the moment because of the way I'm doing things. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. So we're just doing one at a time here. Like so. Oh, that looks nice. That has a little too much. But then we want to put maybe a bigger mountain here. We could do that, you know. Maybe put this right here so it's overlooking. And I need a different type for this side of the coast. I don't like that either. Can I flip these around? Yes, perfect. So we'll get these flipped and we'll place a couple more in the middle here. All right, so hopefully you've seen how we've done a little bit more manual placement now, resizing as we went, and we've created a kind of distorted looking mountain range. We can go back. I want to do a little bit more painting here with the dark texture. I want to resize my tool though. I want to bring this back up to 25, and then we're just gonna. Oh no, it reset to 1. Hang on, I forgot that I can't do it like that. Something like this. We'll go around here in the bowl. Okay. Okay. I'm liking the look of that so far. So that definitely doesn't look like a very pleasant or inviting mountain range, and we'll be able to do more with that landscape as we get deeper into this. We may even make this continent right here could be, barren and cut off. By the way, I'm getting rid of the land bridge. Hold up. I forgot about that the other day. Subtract. we're getting rid of the land bridge. We may do something creative there, but we'll see. All right. All right. Now, what if we want the north to be frozen or colder? Well, that's easy. We could pick whichever direction we want it to be, which is the same process for the blighted area that we just did. You go into the paint tool, you open up your catalog, and we look for something that's, ice and snow, for an example. Just pick one. Let's say we want it to be snow or ice. Let's go with ice too, because it's a little bluer and we can get a better idea. Now, I want to make my brush way bigger here because I actually want to paint a wide swath, and I'm going to leave it at that 29, 30% opacity. But let's say I want both of these islands to just be frozen, right? Well, you just give them a couple passes. All right, and you start to get that effect. Now, it looks a little more subtle if you can also do a couple of passes on the northern tip, like I did just there, and maybe continue it over here and say these two got a couple passes on the northern tip of that land. So we know that it's cold up there. Made a third pass across the very top of the map here. Okay. Now, if we want to make it even subtler, we go back into the ice and we go back to like snow. And where it's further down, we don't want it to look like ice. We just want it to be snow covered. We'll bring that brush size down. We'll keep it at 30%, and we'll just paint like that. And then we do a one. All we do is a one pass. Let's actually bring this down a little bit more to like 20%, and we're going to do it just tip of these continents pass. One, two. I missed right here. Two. Something like that. I'm going to do a second pass because I did it so light. All right. That looks very good on this and subtle on the northern edges of your continent. Hopefully you can see that. So we get a light dusting of snow. We could even bring this down further if we want it. Go over here to the other continent too and paint a little bit of snow over there. We could come down here and do another band or two of snow just like that, just like here, to indicate that it's cold up in this whole region, and then it gets icy on those two islands up there, right? So that's giving you a much less subtle um, version. Actually, bring that down a little bit. That doesn't look too bad. And again, you can play around with these as much as you want, because you can also go in there and say, you know what, I want that northern area to be more like grassy plains as opposed to whatever we have now. So we can go to the grasslands and we can say, okay, well, what color grassy plains do you want? Do you want like I don't know. What do we have here? Let's look at, it's a swamp. I don't want swamps. Land, parchment. I'm looking through all these. There's also the core. I'm going to pick this one right here, which just says dirt one, because this is like it's a brownish color like wheat. Again, make sure your opacity is down a bit, but like 25, 30% I like because that means I can make 4 passes before it's really, really distinct. So you get one pass. If you don't like it, you can always click undo. But we can come up in here and go boom, paint just across like this. And so we're just, creating this more brown area across the middle, which will be grasslands, something like that. We can also bring it down over here into the top of this other continent. So that's at a little more subtle. This is all background stuff for your geography and biomes. And from here, you can continue to just build out your mountain ranges and anything else you think would be a defining feature. Are there going to be swamps somewhere? There's paints for that, and there's ways to make swamps. We're going to be going over all sorts of stuff in this series. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. That'll give you a basic understanding of how to get some very, very, very simple geography and biome stuff into your world to help you continue to flesh out what you're going to be building there. Stick around though, because we're going to be working on this map publicly together. throughout these videos. And then at the end of this, I'm going to put this up into the maps section of Inkarnate so that anyone can use it and clone it and build stuff on their own. But we still got a lot of work to do. I got to go reshape all of the edges of the continent because I haven't done that yet other than on the peninsula. We have to do all that, and we have to continue doing mountain placements and other stuff. So stay tuned if you can. Support. There's memberships here on YouTube. There's 3 different tiers. You can do super chats, super stickers. Don't forget the Patreon page if you want to get our tabletop source book and the first adventure module, as well as our 8K map packs, which I built all of those in Inkarnate. There's a couple dozen of maps that are available to our Patreon supporters. So we'll see you over there. Don't forget the Discord. Links are all down below. Until next time, everybody, safe gaming.